President Donald Trump has frozen all military aid to Ukraine after President Zelensky stated the end of the war was very far away. Boston's mayor twice sends her condolences to the family of a man who was shot while trying to stab people in a Chick-fil-A. And Trump's latest tariffs and tariff threats impact the economy. I'm Tony Kinnett from the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. The President of the United States is set to address a joint session of Congress for a State of the Union-style speech, which Fox News Digital has learned is on the renewal of the American dream. This is where Trump is going to tout his successes, as he's calling them in the first month of his administration, including things like lowering illegal immigration crossings down at the southern border from hundreds of thousands per month during the Biden administration, remembering that the Biden administration said there would need to be a bill passed by Congress to do anything about it, to now the Trump administration without a bill passed by Congress through executive orders and a series of other actions, including a tariff threat against Estados Unidos de Mexico, down to 8,000 crossings per month. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about tariffs because there's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad from what we've seen so far. A lot of this is still left to be found out because the country is still not sure if Donald Trump means when he says that he is a fan of tariffs, if he is in favor of using them in a long-term economic policy right away with the current tax burdens that Americans already find in place, the income tax, property tax, sales tax, the various other taxes that seem to come out of every nook and cranny in this particular society, or whether Donald Trump is just using them as a diplomatic lever for gaining things from other world leaders. That's been rather effective so far in the times and places Trump has tried it. Whether we're talking about Colombia's illegal immigration rectification, whether we're talking about Panama canceling a deal with the China Belt and Road Initiative, whether we're talking about Mexico and Canada doing a lot more to curb illegal immigration, but not enough for Donald Trump, who has now put a 25% tariff in place against both Canada and against Mexico. Here is what the Premier of Ontario had to say as a threat against the United States as a result.
I'm going after absolutely everything, and I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S., and I'm telling you, we will do it.
In addition, Trump announced he would double the tariff on China from the current 10% to 20% for all imports from mainland China. And this has caused a lot of concern in the markets. The markets fell rather roughly yesterday. But there is some good news on the other side of things, which show that we're just not sure how this entire policy and the strategy behind it is going to turn out yet. Two pieces of news from yesterday are definitely worth celebrating for the American economy. From Honda, who was planning to manufacture all of the Honda Civics in a new factory in Mexico, has now announced they will be building all of their Honda Civics in the United States in Indiana, actually just 20 or 30 miles south of yours truly. And they will be manufacturing all of these Civics in the United States because of Trump's tariff threats. Don't forget the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TMSC, whose leaders came to the United States yesterday to announce a $100 billion investment into the United States to increase the amount of semiconductor manufacturing here at home. These plants would be built and expanded upon in Arizona. Now, of course, those are some major economic benefits. We're not quite sure of the end game yet regarding tariffs, how long Trump might keep them in play, if he's using them as a pressure tactic or as a long-term strategy. We assume he'll likely address that at least a little bit more than he has already in his speech this evening. On the international front, President Zelensky is currently confusing individuals in the Trump administration as well as on the global stage on the left and the right, and more populist, corporatist, establishment, pretty much all sides of the political aisle have individuals who are either confused or critical at President Zelensky's current flip-flopping on messaging regarding support in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Zelensky wrote in a post on March 3rd at 12:51 Eastern that he would continue the work with the partners. We've already had talks with other steps to come soon. It is very important that we try to make our diplomacy really substantive to end this war the soonest possible. We need real peace, and Ukrainians want it most because the war ruins our cities and towns. We lose our people. We need to stop the war and to guarantee security. We are working together with America and our European partners and are very much hope on U.S. support on the path to peace. Peace is needed as soon as possible. There are two problems with this particular statement. The first problem is that he has not yet defined what any of the platitudes he stated in this particular statement mean. He hasn't defined what it means for Ukraine to have peace with Russia. He hasn't defined whether or not Ukraine is willing to make any kind of concessions whatsoever. So far, he said no until right after the 2024 elections, in which he temporarily said yes and then went back to saying no negotiation of regions like the Donbass and the Crimea. He says that they are working together with America and European partners, but to be clear, so far, that hasn't really been defined. What does it mean to work with those partners? Keir Starmer of the UK has suggested that Europe is willing to back up some kind of a deal with a financial investment and boots on the ground, but Europe's not really in the place to be kicking up a large budget and military action because it's not supported with their particular populaces, and they also don't have the money for large militaries after they've spent the last couple of decades wasting all of it on large and extravagant social projects. The second issue with the Ukrainian president's statement is that he then comes out soon after, at least according to the Associated Press, to suggest that the war ending, the end of this particular Russo-Ukrainian bloody war, is still, quote, very, very far away, end quote, which doesn't sound like getting closer to peace. And this seems to be how the White House interpreted it.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Mayor Michelle Wu of Boston has been stirring up quite a controversy after twice issuing her condolences to an individual who was shot by an off-duty police officer. Now, what was this individual doing who was shot by an off-duty police officer? He was attempting to stab several people in a Boston Chick-fil-A.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost. I express condolences along with our police commissioner and district attorney because every loss of life is a horrible tragedy.
And that's not the only Democrat struggling. According to a report by Adam Wren of Politico, there were a large group of Democrats meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia, to talk about moderating the party and embracing values like patriotism and going to church and getting back to trying to be a party of the working people. This was quashed by the DNC, who didn't want the party going in that direction. Check it out.
They got together and essentially decided that one of the things the party had difficulty with in November was connecting with working class voters. And they diagnosed this as a problem with Democrats losing trust with working class folks. They sort of listed kind of, 20 contributing factors and sort of 20 possible solutions. And, a lot of the contributing factors are what you would guess. Democrats are significantly connected to unpopular institutions. They are very identity politics focused, talking about, the groups, the constituencies that they have, rather than sort of more patriotic, defining, the politics of the moment in more patriotic terms. And some of their solutions are pretty eye-popping. Some of their solutions are, having the party embrace patriotism more, attending, Friday night high school football games, going to tailgates, showing up at churches. The DNC is actually, within the last 24 hours since I published this, the DNC is sort of very sensitive about this memo because they want to distance themselves from the results of this memo. They would stress that, this was done through no affiliation with them. They're saying that this is sort of not a direction that they want to go in.
Before you go, head down to the description and click the link to make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast. And join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern when we dive into the sudden resignation of the FBI chief of the Southern District of New York, related possibly to those Jeffrey Epstein files, and of course, prep for what's likely to be a Trump speech with more spectacle and controversy than an Oscars red carpet walk. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.